Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you from this book called My Antarctica by G. Neary. And we're going to do a combination of soft-spoken and whispered reading for you tonight. This is part of my viewer's choice end of the year extravaganza. This topic was chosen by Dan, which is a great topic because there's so much you can say about Antarctica. And this book is wonderful because it says things about a lot of topics about Antarctica that you wouldn't normally read anywhere else. So this is a first-hand account of a trip to Antarctica, true adventures in the land of mummified seals, space robots, and so much more. So let's dive right in. There's a cool map there. When I was a kid, I dreamed of being an explorer. I hoped to trek to the poles or dive into the Mariana Trench or rocket to the moon one day, but it never happened. Then I grew up and started writing books for kids, which unexpectedly landed me in the most extreme place on Earth, Antarctica. I was an explorer at last. Okay, I know what you're thinking. How did I end up in the coldest place on Earth? Well, it wasn't easy. A, I live in Florida. B, I was totally unqualified. And C, I don't even own winter clothes. Most people who go to Antarctica are scientists and their support staff, but from the time I was a kid, I never did well in math and science. I found I had to simplify things in a way my brain could understand, like, how do you tell the difference between the Arctic and the Antarctic? My answer, they're opposites. Get it? Simplifying these ideas allowed me to translate science in a way that other kids could understand too. Somehow I managed to convince the National Science Foundation to send me to Antarctica so that I could write about the experience in a way that inspires my readers. Let us chart here. It says Arctic, bears, Santa, ice 3 to 12 feet thick, water underneath. Then in South Antarctic, penguins, no Santa, ice 9,000 feet thick, land underneath. That's a good. They never tell you. I always say this on my channel. Arc is Latin for bear. Antarc is Latin for no bear. That's how you know the difference. Latin or Greek? I think it's Latin. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's one or the other. The first question I had was, how do you even get to Antarctica? Well, after a year of planning, I flew 21 hours from North America to New Zealand, then got in one of those giant military cargo planes you see in movies to fly 5 more hours to the ice. The first time I see Antarctica, it's out of a tiny porthole on the back of the plane. It looks like a frozen planet. I feel weird sitting on the plane surrounded by all these important scientists on their way to solve life's greatest mysteries. And it's mind-numbingly loud. It's going... Says, hey, what? What do you do? What? Says, astrobiologist. We're doing the geophysics, biology beneath the ice shelf, integrated imaging, ice penetration. Huh? We're testing an underwater robot that will explore the subsurface oceans of the moon. Your robot. You? Oh, I write kids' books. What am I even doing here? Antarctica's no Florida, and I am no scientist. Then something strange happens. We land right on the ice, and my doubts turn to awe as soon as we step off the plane. It feels like setting foot on the moon. I feel ready to try to understand this strange and beautiful place so that I can help unlock the mysteries of the continent for you. The first thing I notice is that all the science people here seem to be looking for answers to life's big questions. I guess I Antarctica brings out the 10-year-old in me, like I'm discovering everything for the first time. I can't help but feel like that kid who dreamed of being an explorer so long ago. Everywhere I look, there's something I've never seen before. Check out that seal mom and her pup. They're one of the fastest growing mammals on Earth. Wow, waddles of wild penguins. There's a whole other kind of alien world underneath the ice. Look at all those sea angels. Look at those colors, that huge sky, the endless ice. It's like being in a dream. Look at the blue of that dive hole in the frozen sea. Look at that. What do you mean Antarctica is the biggest desert in the world? OMG, this is really the hut of Captain Scott, the explorer. Is that a 1,000-year-old mummified seal in the mountains? And there are dinosaurs here too. Whoa. I spend a lot of my time in a place called McMurdo Station, the main hub for U.S. science in Antarctica. Most of the 800 to 1,100 Americans coming to the ice each year stay at least a week here. The odd thing about McMurdo, it sits on at the base of an active volcano called Mount Erebus. This seems like a bad idea until they tell me that it's open at the top like a giant bowl, allowing all that heat and pressure to vent. While it never erupts, it occasionally spits out a small lava bomb or two, but at the station we're safe. The only other artist grantees here are Kirsten and Michelle, who I share lab space with. They draw ocean species while diving under the sea ice. And that's apparently Elaine, our guardian on the ice, with the other authors and illustrators. Alright. So that's Scott, his roommate. He says, McMurdo Station reminds me of college. I sleep in a dorm, which you'll see in the photo, with my roommate Scott, a precipitation scientist who's here to count snow. I train, work in the lab, worry about who to sit with in the cafeteria, go to the gym, relax in the lounge watching bad movies, and try to make new friends. So here's a map of McMurdo. Number 1 says the food galley. Main hub of life here. The food is amazing. Everything from Sunday brunch with brisket to Thai shrimp curry to burger and burrito nights. Because people work around the clock, you can order pizzas to go 24 hours a day. My kind of place. And number 2 is in the same building. Also in the big blue building, a small gift store, a barber shop, a crafts room, a radio station, and the most remote ATM in the world. Number three. I promise you I've read this before. It took me ages to find all the numbers. Number 3. A small library where you can read Antarctic classes like The Worst Journey in the World. Number 4. That's the Skua Hut, a free thrift store for anything from old boots and socks to used Santa costumes. Number 5. An old officers club, now a coffee house with a workout gym next door. Number 6. Right here. An old indoor basketball court with a rock climbing wall. Number 7. Prairie labs where science teams bring their samples back to study. Number 8. Dive locker where divers hang out and prep. Number 9. The helipad where you can take off to go to remote locations. Number 10. Training school. Number 11. This is the where this is snowmobiles be here. Number 12. Camping depot where you can check out gear in a back station. Always check in before heading into the wild. 14 is the general hospital. Number 15 is the yacht club, with no yachts. And 16 is the Chapel of the Snows. One of my friends got married there. Number 17 is up here. Live video hookup area, where I talk to schools back in the US. Number 18, Ob Hill, where there's a giant cross honoring Captain Scott and his men. Number 19, the shuttle stop, where you can head over to New Zealand Scott Base or ice shelf locations. And number 20 is the Road to Discovery hut, the first explorer's hut. And this was the dorms where this guy's talking about where he stayed. It also says, note, by the time you read this, the old station will have been torn down and replaced with a newer, more modern base. I think this book came out, I want to say like 2023. So by now, it's all updated and modern, I suppose. Pretty cool. Because I think he said later his trip was in like 2019. So it'll say at the end, I don't remember. This is how you dress in Antarctica. It's called extreme cold weather, or ECW gear. You even have to wear it on the plane. Got goggles, balaclava and cap, gloves or mittens, bunny boots, Carhartt overalls with thermal underwear, and a big red parka. They also give me a cool radio handle to boot. This is Whiskey 480 over. Just like a real explorer. Since this is the most extreme place on Earth, I have to do a whole week of special training before I start exploring. In Antarctica, safety first. Your life depends on it. There's learning how to secure a tent, practicing rappelling into a crevasse, learning about emergency rescue procedures, studying cracks in ice for safe passage, and helicopter safety training. One of the first things I notice is that no one really looks like an explorer, or at least the ones I think of from the olden days. People here look like regular people. Some are young, some old. One of the scientists is 81. There's a mix of men and women, mostly white, but I see a few folks of color like me. There are a lot of science people, but many others have regular jobs like chef, janitor, mechanic, firefighter, carpenter, doctor, plumber, and even barber. Because it's so hard to get here, no one seems to complain much, even while they're hard at work. It says I may be cleaning toilets and dishes, but I'm cleaning them in Antarctica. Looks can be deceiving. One woman who seems like a cheerful librarian turns out to be the Indiana Jones of the ice. She's a mechanical engineer for ice structures and is part of the South Pole Traverse team. Her job, searching for hidden crevasses. She sometimes has to climb down into them to blow them up so her team can safely pass. People here work very hard, so they like to have fun too. Picture a costume marathon there. Antarctica is an entire continent devoted solely to science. It's like a frozen museum. Scientists are looking at 5 basic things: Earth, its history, its living creatures, how it all works together, and even outer space. It says the geophysicist, the ice shelf here is the biggest piece of ice in the world, and when that melts, it will drastically change the map of the Earth. The paleobotanist, one of the big surprises for people is that millions of years ago, Antarctica was free of ice, and different landscapes hosted all kinds of plants and animals, including dinosaurs. Look at this leaf fossil. Wow. The astrophysicist. Antarctica is an ideal place to explore space from. We're tracking cosmic rays to determine the origin of the universe. The geochemist. I use isotopes to reveal information about the ages and origins of rock, air, or water. They're like radioactive clocks in the rocks. The seal biologist. We're trying to understand how many animals are here, how that's changing over time, and why some live longer and produce more offspring than others. And the student. I have no idea. My job down here is to follow different science teams into the field to try to understand what they do. Let's see what they're doing. Testing an underwater robot to descend to the moon Europa. Working on a long-duration air balloon to capture cosmic rays. Collecting ice sheet data by remote sensing radar. Preparing to dive underneath the ice shelf. Installing an undersea webcam to study life under the ice. Collecting ocean specimens. Listening to rocks crack to study erosion. Using a robot to probe for crevasses on Mount Erebus. Conducting laboratory experiments. Sifting for foraminifera. And studying layers of ice to look back in time. A lot of the details of scientists' work goes over my head, so when I talk to them, I like to start at the beginning. Then it's just like we're two kids talking to each other. When was the first time science or nature exploded in your brain? I remember the first time I saw the moons of Jupiter through a telescope. Where I grew up, we had the most amazing skies. I knew my constellations because my dad was a paratrooper who knew how to navigate by night sky. Slowly, I began to understand why they do what they do. This one says, when I was a kid, my dad's best friend was a carpenter down here, and once he brought me a big book about Antarctica. That book grabbed me so much, I just really got into the idea of the South Pole and everything. And he tells crazy stories too. I guess it's why I became so interested in snow and ice. The days are long and hard. Actually, a day is my whole visit. Almost 2 months of long. Almost 2 months long, since the sun never sets in Antarctica at this time of year. Time feels both fast and slow. Sometimes days seem like weeks, and other times hours are like minutes. A couple of friends got frostbite. They heal. We all get sick with this thing called the crud. That's what it feels like. And I miss my family. When I call home, it feels like I'm in a different dimension. Because of the difference in time zones, it's 8 hours later for my family, but a day earlier. Blamed the international dateline. This is the longest I've ever been away. Sometimes when I video call, my computer freezes. Literally. I have to put my laptop inside my jacket so my body heat can warm it back up. In a weird way, it's like hugging them again. When I wonder why I'm really here, I remember that writers and artists have been coming to the ice since the beginning. Somebody needs to pick up where they left off and tell the story of this place, its science, and the amazing people here. Why not me? This is Herbert Ponting, expedition photographer and cinematographer for Captain Scott's Terra Nova expedition. This is an account from Ernest Shackleton. Apsley Cherry Gerard. Apsley Cherry Gerard, part of Captain Scott's team and author of The Worst Journey in the World. This is Cape Crossler. Cape Crossler by Edward Wilson. And this is Herbert Ponting in action. It looks like the Endurance there. Yeah, because he's with Captain Scott. Right? No, Endurance was Shackleton. Alright, I can't remember the name of Captain Scott's ship. So I say yes whenever someone asks me if I want to go someplace, meet somebody, or experience something special. It's how I find stories. Here's a fake emergency drill. Look, they painted scars all over them. Snowmobiling areas across frozen sea, fishing for specimens, helicoptering, penguining, hiking across lava beds, collecting glacier berries to melt for water, trying not to get frostbite, and climbing down under the sea ice like Mario. Being here gets my imagination going. It makes me want to walk in the footsteps of the great explorers, discovering new wonders never seen before. Like joining the Traverse team to trek 28 days to the South Pole, or capturing cosmic rays with a long-duration balloon to find the origin of the universe. It makes me want to dive under the ice into the clearest water on Earth, where extreme cold and high oxygen levels cause polar gigantism, which means everything is bigger. That grouper. Or ride a zodiac boat across the frozen sea. Or see those strange nacreous clouds form when the sun rises after many months of total darkness. You see these clouds? Isn't that beautiful? It's like an oil slick in the sky. For sure, I want to know why Blood Falls is red, or why when you cut into a meteorite found near Nimrod Glacier, it looks like stained glass icebergs. I want to know how these amazing penguins are affected by climate change, and what we can do to slow down the melting of the ice. I want to see and know it all, to experience Antarctica in all its beauty and wonder. There's Aurora Australis. I find myself taking endless pictures of the icy horizon because every time I look at it, it's different. I look at every single picture is a different color. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different pictures of the same horizon. Not the same horizon, but the horizon of Antarctica, all in different colors. I also make videos of my feet as they walk across the ice, the snow, the lava rocks, and the dirt, because I'm in awe of all the amazing textures and sounds they make as I trek across Antarctica. Do you think someone's done Antarctica ASMR? Surely it's out there somewhere. I should Google that after this. Sometimes I look at penguin tracks too. I record sounds so I won't forget the soulful calls of seals wafting up from under the sea ice. The crackle of interference on a satellite phone from meteorites passing through the atmosphere. The sound of pressure ice snapping and popping. Even the sound of true silence, so quiet I can hear my heartbeat in my ears. Sometimes I laugh out loud from the sheer spectacle of it all. Spectacle, 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 spectacle. All this information makes my head hurt, but I have a notebook called My Brain, where I try to make sense of everything. To figure out how this place works, I start making lists of things I come across. Here are a few. It's things you won't find in Antarctica. Polar bears, see North Pole. Grass, trees, people on smartphones, Starbucks, dogs or cats, fast food, malls, schools, pets, traffic jams, guns, rain, night during summer, day during winter, bugs, kids, and blazing internet. Things you will find: dorms, a galley cafeteria, a free thrift store, the Skua Hut, a church, 2 libraries, a wine bar/coffee shop, 3 gyms, a basketball court with climbing wall, a giant science lab, a radio station, a gift store, a barber, hand washing stations, aquarium, helicopter pad, arts and crafts room, a yacht club, offices with cubicles, and an ATM. List 2 vehicles of Antarctica. It says since it's so tricky to travel on all that snow and ice, people have to be inventive in how they move from point A to Z. Here's an ATV carrying a whole science team, a helicopter or helo, the Haglund, a Zodiac nearing a marine research vessel, Ivan the Terrabus, List 3. Sorry, that's list 5. He has lots of lists. Critters of Antarctica. Antarctica is home to more than just penguins, seals, and whales, with some of the most unique sea creatures in the world. Here's a feathered sea star, a sea angel, the little wings, a jellyfish, a giant sea spider, which I'll pass on that. That sounds gross. A scale worm, and look at this little octopus on the tip of his finger. Wild. List 7 is uniforms of Antarctica. While most people wear big red, you'll see plenty of other outfits on the ice. There's big red. Firefighter's uniform, cold water dry suit, military uniform, microbiologist hazmat suit, baker's uniform, one-piece heavyweight suit, and penguin costume. List 11 is sports and recreation. People in Antarctica work hard, which means they need to do something fun to unwind. Luckily, you can do everything from sports like softball, basketball, marathon racing, and biking, to relaxation like yoga, tai chi, and music, to friendly competitions against the New Zealand station next door, like rugby, manhauling, and tug of war. See, it looks like they're biking here. I guess wrestling, piling on each other, tai chi, sledding, and a concert. I think was it Metallica that did a concert in Antarctica so they could say they played all 7 continents? It was someone like that. Maybe it was AC/DC. It was someone like that. I want to say Metallica. List 18 is toilets of Antarctica. Just like camping in any pristine area, there is a strict pack it out rule when it comes to relieving yourself. Believe it or not, all human waste from Americans gets collected, processed into powder cakes, and shipped all the way back to the US of A. There's the rocket toilets that incinerate the waste, a tent toilet, a tandem, go side by side. What does it say? Pee here, poop here. Oh, I see. One's for pee pee, one's for poo poo. An outhouse, a room with a view, just out in the open, and there's a pee bottle. List 31 is icebergs shaped like things. This one's shaped like a couch. This one's shaped like a sea monster. This one's shaped like swans. This one's shaped like a submarine and a ship. This one's shaped like a cat. And this one's shaped like a big head. I see it. List 35 is weird things I saw in Antarctica. Tomato plants growing from a box of dried human waste. The only plant life I ever saw. Metal chain sculpture of an orca. Lots of big crosses for people who died. A rock concert. Ice stock. Seal teeth shaped like flames. Infrared telescope to see invisible auroras. And Fata Morgana, an ice mirage. List 39 things you'll find in an explorer's hut. Since Antarctica is the coldest and driest place on Earth, things don't rot or decay. Everything is literally frozen in time. The explorers' huts are just as they were, left over 100 years ago. It's the only place I've ever felt like I was time traveling. There's an explorer's boot. Science instruments. Me pretending to warm up next to an old stove. A cargo box. Matchstick lighter. Science experiment abandoned upon rescue. Ooh, it's a dead penguin. Ew. List 43, the strange and wonderful structures of the ice. Cold weather means shelter and unique structures for science. Here's a camp at Explorer's Cave. Explorer's Cove. Explorer's Cove, sorry. An airfield control tower. The Apple Emergency Shelter. NASA satellite dish, aka the golf ball. Observation tube, aka OB tube. And the South Pole Merisat GOES antenna. Some experiences can't be captured on a list, but there are a few that I'll never forget. Like that time we were trapped in a helicopter over the frozen sea, running out of fuel and surrounded by Condition 1 storms. Or that time we trekked where no human had ever walked before. Or when I slept at the foot of a glacier listening to it calve all night. Or when I woke up in the same kind of tent that the explorers Scott and Shackleton used, and stared out at the same pluming volcano they saw over 100 years ago. Or how I had so many penguin encounters they started calling me the Penguin Whisperer. Or that time I set out on a Holy Grail trek with my guide Jared and found the mythical pickaxe supposedly driven into the top of a volcanic cone like King Arthur's sword by Ernest Shackleton. You can see it there. There's a better picture, but it says it turned out to be one of Captain Scott's team members' axes instead. Although I wished I could hold it, I respected its place in history and left it untouched. Or that time I paid tribute to a long ago friend who perished here many years ago. It was his yearning to dive underneath the ice in Antarctica that got me dreaming about coming here. It says, Mark and I lived across the hall from each other in college. His dream was to dive in Antarctica. He was a big fan of my creative output. One day he had a big announcement. I'm going to Antarctica. It was the last time I saw him. He was a part of a Scripps dive team and completed 21 successful dives, fulfilling his lifelong dream. Then a diving accident ended everything. Now I am standing at the bottom of the world, where a diver friend at the exact spot where it happened almost 30 years ago to the day. Sometimes I dream he's still down there swimming with all those amazing creatures that filled him with wonder. Thinking of Mark makes me think about the most important thing of all in Antarctica, the people. They say the world is like a snow globe, and when you shake it, all the dreamers, outsiders, risk takers, and folks who don't belong anywhere else settle at the bottom in Antarctica. Like Mark, like me, like everyone down here, it seems. Maybe that's what helps people work so well together. Everyone's in the same boat and needs everyone else to survive and get work done. The only boss here is Mother Nature, and you better listen to her. In the end, Antarctica feels like a dream to me. I came down here hoping to write something that captured this strangely wonderful world of the ice. This is what I wrote on the flight home. When I first arrived in Antarctica, I felt like a brown boy in the whitest place on Earth. At first sight, Antarctica is so white. In a storm, the ice is white, the sky is white, the people are white. But when the weather clears, you see the bluest sky, you see a rainbow in the ice, and the people are the most colorful on Earth. After 7 weeks here, I think I've finally discovered the real heart and soul of this place. It may be the most extreme faraway spot on the planet, but it feels like home. Final list for Antarctica. Things we leave behind. There's a pile of all the cold weather gear. A snow angel. There's the airplane flying away. The cargo plane flying away. So now I get to read all the interesting stuff that says author's note. I don't really have a head for science. I didn't really have a head for science when I was a kid. I was, however, immensely curious and loved to hear stories about the old explorers like Ernest Shackleton and Robert F. Scott, and people I grew up watching on TV like Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey, Jacques Cousteau, and the astronauts. Even though they didn't look like me, I loved the idea of someone being called to a faraway place completely opposite from their world, and learning all about it as they explored. It usually changed their lives. Maybe that's why I dared myself to apply for an artists and writers grant from the National Science Foundation to go to Antarctica. I wanted to be an explorer too. Back in 2017, that's when I was writing books for and working with a lot of kids from urban areas, some of whom had never really experienced nature, or like me, didn't do well in science. So I decided I would immerse myself in the world of the ice and become a science translator, telling stories in a way that would have inspired me as a kid. I was so taken by the time down there that I teamed up with other past grantees to form the Antarctic Artists and Writers Collective, which you can find at aawcollective.com. So you can see how others used their artistic talents to tell the story of Antarctica too. There are many ways to get to the ice. If I can do it, you can too. I hope some of you will be inspired to go there yourselves when you grow up. And maybe one day my channel will be massive and I'll get sponsored to go. That's another dream of mine because penguins are my favorite birds. Let's read the facts and stuff. Antarctica is big. It's bigger than the US and Mexico combined. 5.5 million square miles or 14 million square kilometers. But instead of having 460 million people, Antarctica has only 5,000 humans at its busiest season, spread over the entire continent. It's the emptiest place on Earth. It is also the coldest, driest, windiest, overall highest, and most extreme place on the planet, which maybe explains the empty part. Even though it's 98% covered in snow and ice, it's the largest desert in the world, a polar desert, with ice as thick as 3 miles or almost 5 kilometers deep. Its highest point is the peak of Mount Vinson at 16,050 feet or 5,000 meters. Its lowest point is 11,500 feet or 3,500 meters deep. Under the Denman Glacier, the deepest land point in the world. Wow. Antarctica was the last continent to be discovered in 1820. It's the least walked upon continent on Earth, but also the most well mapped. Antarctica has 24 time zones, all of which meet at the South Pole, though in practice McMurdo was on the same time as Christchurch, New Zealand, since that's the last stop for everyone heading to the ice. It also has 24 hours of either sunlight or darkness, depending on the time of year. People cannot stay on the ice for much more than a year before returning to the mainland to allow their bodies to recover from the darkness and cold. The cold is so harsh that it actually changes your body chemistry, which can result in some short-term memory loss. There are no people who are from Antarctica, but many still call it home. And this is as my handler Elaine likes to show us where things are in Antarctica by using her handy-dandy hand map. Go like that. So there's the South Pole. Whereas there's McMurdo Station. There's Palmer Station. Is that what it says? Yeah. The Transatlantic Mountains. That's pretty cool. An international treaty signed in 1959 made Antarctica the only continent dedicated to the peaceful pursuit of science without claims to territory, meaning no one can own the ice. About 30 countries have research stations down there pursuing such sciences as biology, glaciology, paleontology, earth science, ecology, astrophysics, particle physics, space weather, oceanography, and atmospheric science. The first artist to go in search of Antarctica was William Hodges, who joined Captain James Cook's second voyage to the end of the world in 1772. His painting of icebergs was the first known eyewitness depiction of the southern continent. Likewise, Robert F. Scott and Ernest Shackleton both took artists and writers on their expeditions to tell the story of their exploits. Sorry for my tummy, which made headlines back in the early 1900s. To entertain themselves during the long, harsh winters, Scott's team created a magazine, the South Polar Times. And for the winter of 1908, Shackleton brought a printing press to the ice to make a book, Aurora Australis. The Antarctic Artists and Writers Program continues this tradition, having brought over 125 creative people to the ice over the last 40 plus years. As of 2023, it will be called Polar Steam. In 2019, the Antarctic Artists and Writers Collective was formed to exhibit and share these amazing artists' work with the public. Big questions about Antarctica. Who gets to go there? The population is roughly 30% scientists and 70% support personnel, and maybe one or two people like me. Tourists can visit, but only for brief excursions along the coastline. How do you eat? Food is shipped once a year, and they keep a 3-year supply in a giant warehouse freezer. They're amazing cooks here, so you eat well. Why doesn't the sun set? During its summer, Antarctica is on the side of Earth tilted toward the sun, causing constant 24-hour sunlight. In the winter, Antarctica is tilted away from the sun, causing 24 hours of darkness. How do you sleep? Poorly, in a tent or dorm room, often with a sleep mask covering your eyes to keep the sunlight out. Is there Wi-Fi? Not really. Your phones are useless here. There's internet at the stations, but it's so slow that you can't watch any streaming media. And if you want to email a single photograph, it might take a while. It's the equivalent of making your phone a hotspot and sharing it with 1,000 people. Are there hotels and restaurants? No. At the stations, there's a main cafeteria or galley that feeds everybody, and if you go to a remote camp, you have to bring your own food. What is a mummy seal? It's a mummified seal, hard as a rock, and even if it's hundreds or thousands of years old, it won't have decomposed too much because it's been freeze-dried by the coldest, driest place on Earth. A mummified seal might be the result of a young pup getting separated from the group in a storm and wandering off in the wrong direction, potentially ending up many miles from the water where it perishes and freezes. What dinosaurs were discovered in Antarctica? Over 10 species have been discovered in the Transantarctic Mountains and on James Ross Island, most famously the Cryolophosaurus, aka Elvosaurus, because of its crested pompadour. Dinosaurs still roam the ice in the form of penguins. What are cosmic rays and why use balloons to capture them? Cosmic rays are basically stardust from the Big Bang. They're clues to the origins of the universe. Scientists use long-duration air balloons that ride the winds to circumnavigate the continent, staying up without intervention and delivering stardust particles back to the scientists like a boomerang. So there's a little blurb here from a visitor to Antarctica. It says being away from family's the hard part, but what keeps me coming down here is all the science and engineering. One little tweak to some equation can actually save a life. How cold does it get? Negative 40 degrees in summer, negative 76 Fahrenheit or negative 60 Celsius in winter. But it's a dry negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest recorded temperature in Antarctica was negative 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 89 Celsius. How do you not freeze to death? Wear your extreme cold weather gear, follow safety rules, hydrate, and always have a field buddy when you're outdoors. Is Antarctica really a desert? Yes, it's a polar desert and the largest desert in the world. In fact, it's so dry people can go weeks without showering. They don't sweat and therefore tend not to smell either. Why is Blood Falls red? While not all the details are known, scientists believe Blood Falls emerges from a hill that's rich in iron, so the water oxidizes and turns red when it reaches the surface, much like rust. How dangerous is it really? The extremes of Antarctica can be very dangerous. That's why everyone does safety training every time they go to Antarctica. Everyone has to radio in before and after all outdoor treks to keep safe. Missed check-ins will turn into rescues. Did that pickaxe really belong to Shackleton? No, me and a friend, Jared Knox, were able to determine it had been left by one of Captain Scott's Northern Party members in 1912, marking a food depot they'd rediscovered after having survived their winter in the snow cave. How do you avoid getting hit by lava bombs? Even though it would be your natural instinct to run away, scientists encourage you to face the volcano and pretend you are a center fielder tracking a fly ball. That way you can get out of the lava bomb's way before it lands. What is a Condition 1 storm? Antarctica has its own storm rating system. Condition 1 means extreme weather. Seek shelter immediately. What's a sea angel? Sea angels are these tiny alien-looking beings that are a form of polar sea slug. They are see-through, gelatinous creatures with wings, very ethereal. What's a glacier berry? When glaciers calve off large chunks of ice, we call them glacier berries and collect them to melt for drinking water when in remote camps. Glacier water is the best. Carrying these large chunks of ice back to camp, the worst. This account says, Antarctica changes your DNA. There are no distractions like phones and parking and finding times to meet up. Here you eat, work, and play together. It's intense. And this account says, out on location were the most remote people in the world. It's like the poor man's space program. What causes auroras, nacreous clouds, and fata morganas? All are forms of atmospheric disturbances. Auroras, or aurora australis, are a natural light show in the atmosphere caused by storms on the sun that disturb electrons in the Earth's magnetic field. In 24-hour sunlight, they are still there, but only visible using special ultraviolet or UV instruments. Nacreous clouds, or mother-of-pearl clouds, form when the temperatures in the upper atmospheres fall below negative 108 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 78 degrees Celsius, which turns the moisture in the air into supercooled liquid or ice crystals. Light is refracted by the ice crystals in the clouds, producing the shimmering iridescent rainbow effect found during the windfly season, when the sun first emerges after 5 months of darkness. Fata Morganas are ice mirages named for Arthurian sorceress Morgan Le Fay. They occur when a layer of warmer ice or warmer air falls on colder, dense air, acting like a refracting lens and inverting the image of whatever object lies beyond it. Why do you have to carry a pee bottle? There is a strict no yellow snow policy. We need it to keep everything as pristine as possible, even if it makes it harder for women in remote camps. How dangerous is frostbite? Back in the explorer days, when access to medical care was more precarious, an appendage with frostbite would turn black and potentially fall off, toes, fingers, even noses. But these days, more is known about treatments. With immediate transport back to a doctor, frostbite can be relatively straightforward to treat. Who discovered Antarctica? It is believed that as far back as the 7th century, Maori explorer Huiterangiora reached Antarctica, describing a dark and misty place with tall, bare mountains that pierce the sky. Among Westerners, Captain James Cook was the first to venture past the Antarctic Circle in 1773, passing islands and icebergs, but failing to reach the continent. Russian explorers Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen and Mikhail Lazarev were the first to see the continent of Antarctica in 1820. The first landing was probably a year later, when American Captain John Davis set foot on the ice. The heroic age of Antarctic explorers kicked off with the race to the South Pole, with many failed attempts by Captain Robert Falcon Scott and Ernest Shackleton's expeditions. Norwegian Roald Amundsen beat them both in 1911. When Scott finally reached the pole a month later, he was shocked to find a Norwegian flag and tent. Scott famously wrote in his diary, "Great God, this is an awful place." There's more books to read, films to watch. Oh, and there's one last account. Let's read that. This also is dedicated to the memory of Mark McMillan. This says, Antarctica changes your understanding of everything. When you stand on the South Pole, which direction is north? What time zone are you in? It's like a playground for science. And that is the end of our book tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video oops, to be relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good night. Good night.